Okay, so we're continuing. Excuse me, let's bring up the original text. The Maamar we learned of Chayesara in the year Tavshin Nun Aleph, end of 1990. The last Maamar we have on the Parsha Chayesara from the Rebbe so far. So what we learned was the Rebbe discussing the idea of the question that's asked, why does it say Me'ah Shana in the singular, 100, that she lived 100 years, Hebrew. The Lashon HaKodesh, it's Shana, singular, Esrim, Shana, singular, and then Sheva, for the 7, we say Shanim, plural. And the difference between the groups of number of 120 and 7, that the hundreds are a complete number, 10 times 10, each of the 10 midos, attributes, starting from the 3 intellectual, 7 emotional, each one made up of 10, so like there's the wisdom of kindness, the wisdom of understanding, etc. 10 times 10 is 100, which is a completion. It's the idea of how all the attributes are complete. Then you have the 20, which represents the 10, the two times 10 of the levels of Chachma Bina, wisdom and understanding. And the reason we say Shana, the singular, is because it's not just it's also the wisdom and understanding are so interrelated that they can't be separated, like two friends that cannot be separated. You can't have wisdom without understanding, and understanding without the inspiration of the wisdom. So therefore it says again the singular. And Sheva Shanim is the division of the emotions, where the person's made up of the spectrum of emotions, from chesed to severity, limitations, boundaries, etc., overgiving, compassion, connection, etc. All this, even though that there's 7 different emotions, so therefore it's plural, Sheva Shanim, but the idea is that within all these levels, Sarah had completion, and she brought godliness and purpose into her entire life. The Rebbe says, how does this apply to us? What does this mean to us in our avodah to find the completion of the idea of 120 and 7 within our avodah Hashem? And the Rebbe finishes off and says that's why the pasuk completes itself. That Shnei Chayesar, these are the days of Sarah, although it starts off saying these are the days of Sarah. That when you have a completion of the 10, of the 100, the 20, and the 7, so then you reach a level that's beyond the division of those 3 groups, and that's why it doesn't say a number. It just says these are the life of Sarah, that she's elevated her ability to connect with the external. It's called the first level, the first exclamation of the 100 that represents the keser, the want, this ratzin and the tainug and the pleasure, which is makiv, an encompassing energy, her deep intellectual, and also her emotions. And she's so complete that therefore this is the life of Sarah, a complete person. The Rebbe is going to continue now holding Gimel. So Sarah Lavin, one needs to understand, Bill Peter said, based on what we said now, so the life of Sarah is a 4th level of elevation. First, she's mastered her 100, which is, let's say, either her deep intellectual or her encompassing, according to 2 different versions, and her intellectual components that are the feed to your emotional response, and she's mastered her emotions. So therefore, she's elevated to a 4th level of completion, is seemingly what the verse is saying. But that doesn't make sense according to what's the literal translation of the verse. So the Rebbe says, the Peter says, Shnei Chayesara. So when we finish off, these are the days of Sarah, who seemingly it's its own level. That means above, when she mastered their 100 years, her 20 years, and her 7 years, she's reached, so to say, a full completion of a master of her full being, seemingly a 4th component. Well, Pash is a kasav, but the simplicity of the verse doesn't seem to see it that way. It says Shnei Chayesara, that what is the life of Sarah is the Kuf Chav Sayin Shan, is her 127 years. Not that it's a 4th component, it's just like a summary of the 127 years. Atzma, themselves. It's not an accomplishment that she accomplished above mastering the 100, the 20, and the 7. That's what Rashi itself says. Rashi says, Shnei Chayesar, what does it mean? These are the days of Sarah. Kulam, these 3 groups that we spoke before, the 100, the 20, and the 7, which we'll see what Rashi says in a second on those three groups, that you should know that they're all in a good way, equally good. What does it mean that they're equally good? I mean, this idea, it's not that it's a fourth component of achievement. It's that all of them themselves in their own groups were equally good. She was equally good in 100, in the 100 group. She was equally good, so to say, in the 20, and equally good in the 7. It's not a fourth component. Meaning to say that they were equally good and complete as they were, not to describe that she reached, so to say, because she mastered. Means say the way the Maamar understands it until this point, until Sif Gimel from yesterday, was that by mastering the 120 and 7, she reaches a fourth level of so to say, of elevation or achievement. But the simple idea is that these are the days of Sarah, means that her days themselves were equally good in those three groups. Also, what Rashi says, what is the three groups according to Rashi? Rashi says that by Bas Kuf, that when she was 100, she was like a Bas Chav, like a 20-year-old. And Bas Chav, when she was in her 20s, she had the positive character traits of a 7-year-old with regard to sin, beauty, etc. The older age seeming to walk away where things are more challenging. It's harder to stay as complete and perfect when you're older as you live life. Sarah was so perfect that just like a child has not much sin, so too Sarah was perfect even in her older life. A person gets older, their beauty kind of wanes away. Sarah stayed beautiful like a young person stays beautiful. So that means the older that it's where the later years are trying to draw energy from the younger years. Meaning to say that the younger years in this case, well, according to Rashi, are better years than the older years. One would think that you age, so she didn't age. So 100 is an age, is amount of years a person lives that a person would maybe age and become less beautiful. No, she stayed beautiful. So from Rashi saying it basically means that the best years are the 7 years. And 20, she was unique that when she's 20, where people would get older and maybe sin and be more exposed, she stayed innocent like a child. That when she was 20, she remained innocent like she was younger, like a young person has a young sense of innocence. And when she was 20, that when a person turns 100, let's say in beauty, you get older, she stayed beautiful as if she was 20. But what we said before, in the Hasidic ideas of the ages, it's the opposite, that 100 is a complete number. That's Keser. That's the encompassing energy beyond the details of understanding, wisdom, and emotions. And Chacham, which is the emotions, is stronger, which is the intellect of the person, is the Ma'amar is higher than the emotions. So in the Hasidic explanation based on the Zohar, the 100 is a higher, lower is 20, lower is 7. But the way Rashi says it, the simplest explanation is the opposite, that her highest level is 7, and at 20 she was like she was 7. At 100 she was like she was 20. So how does that work? How does that go together? The Rebbe says. So the Rebbe continues like this. Yuvim Bagdim will understand this. Amavur become a drushim, which is explained. Hemshech Divrei Hazor. This that the Zohar says. The Mea Shana Klala Dekula. What does it mean that the 100 years is an incomplete number? Shemea Shana who Raza the Mea Bracha B'Chayim. That what is the, so to say, the completion, the complete number of 100 is connected to the idea that a person is supposed to make the secret of the idea a person should make 100 blessings a day. You know, that was instituted by King David. A person should make 100 blessings a day. And so much so that we make an effort on days that have less prayers. Like the weekday has 8, we do 19 prayers every tefillah. So we already have a good part of the 100. But in Shabbos, we don't have the Shemona Esrei. We have much less blessings in the Amidah. So what do? We try to make blessings. You eat more, you have another piece of fruit, a little dessert. So you can make up, you listen to someone else's blessings and say, Amen, my father used to do when we were growing up. So what happens is that a person has he's supposed to have 100 brachas. So what is the idea of the secret of 100 brachas? A person's obligated to try to make 100 blessings a day. The Chazal that rabbis have learned. Where do we know this from? What was the hint? Pasuk from the verse that says Va'at Yisrael. Now the Jewish people, Moshe says, Ma Hashem lekecha shoyim imach. What does God want from you? And the Gemara says that you should say Al tikvei ma. Don't say what does God want from you as in a question, but say it as in a statement that make the word of Maya 100 is what God wants from you. What does it mean 100? He wants 100 blessings. But what's the idea? Shemeya shana hugam haklal the esrim shana v'sheva shana. That in that he says the idea is like this: that in the 100 years. It's not just that it's a general, complete number on its own of 100. It's a complete number that has within it the 20 and the 7. In 100, there's a 20 and there's a 7, right? Kulala dekula means that the completion is within the 100 itself. Not that it's a complete number separate from the 20 and the 7, but it's a complete number of the 20 and 7. Meaning to say, the noise of Zeshakol Meya Hadargis Esers. When we have 100, we have 10 times 10, which we said are the 10 attributes, each attribute made up of 10 components. So, of course, we have the 20 and the 7 in it, which is in the levels of Keser, means the way we look at it from the encompassing energy, which we said, what is the encompassing energy within the person is like the idea of the Ratzain and Tainuk, or Nashem as well. It's the desire and the pleasure, which is not internal like wisdom and not like the Moichin and the Midos, the intellectual and the emotional. And that 100 is a general rule, because in the desire and in the ratzin that's created, the want that's created by the desire, it has it all in an inclusive level that gets broken down later in an intellectual and an emotional. But within the desire and the want, it's all inclusive and beyond division. It's even more inclusive than how the intellectual are connected together, meaning the wisdom and understanding. That we said before, that in the 20 they're so widely connected in a single number, because you cannot have wisdom properly without understanding of the wisdom, and you don't have an inspiration to have wisdom unless you're connected with that inspiration, which is the wisdom. The wisdom feeds the understanding, and the wisdom needs the understanding. It's dependent on the understanding. If you don't understand, what's the purpose of the wisdom? Is hugam haklal the kol gemachalukas. It's not just that it's beyond division, but it's also within the 3 levels. Meaning, gam de esrim shana v'sheva shana. Even within, that means the 100 has within it also the level of 20 of moichin of intellect, as well as the 7 midos. Within the 100, not just that it's a beyond the number, but within it has those numbers. Meaning to say, as explained, the idea is that not that when a person has, let's say, the focus or the connection to the desire and the ratzin and the want, which is the encompassing energy. But once you go into your panimis, into your internal, and you start to analyze it in an intellectual level, and then the intellectual feeds the emotional level, you go away from the tainig, the pleasure that's so to say encompassing this, and the desire. It's just like an encompassing energy, but doesn't penetrate into the internal of the person. It says no, that you have to integrate that tainug. It's the fuel. Means to say is that when a person, that you have to fuel your intellect and emotions with the caster, with encompassing energy. When a person is thinking, that's separate from the motivation of the thinking, meaning that you were motivated initially by when you take pleasure in the outcome or what you're trying to think about, what you're trying to understand, and you have a want based on the desire. And therefore, now it triggers the intellect. But now, the intellect, once it starts, it separates it. You should feel, so to say, the influence of the desire and want in the intellect and in the emotions. That it's connected. It doesn't just get triggered by it, but it's living with it, within it. He says, now he says like this. That you have, that we said before, that the 100 is, so to say, the rules, the inclusiveness of the 20 and the 7 is not only according to what we said yesterday, that 100 is keser, which is the desire and want, ratzin and tainu, Therefore, you could say, yes, when you have desire and you have want, so we can understand that the desire and the want are constantly fueling within, and it's felt within the intellect that's creating the emotional response. It means you should understand Hashem. Like, let's say you say, for instance, in the Shema Yisrael, we have Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad is moichin, and then you have Baruch Shem, then you have V'ahavta Es is emotion, right? So you say it. That's this boinus. Shema Yisrael, Shema is this boinin to understand, and then that feeds the V'ahavta, the emotional response. So then you could say, okay, I understand that beyond the beginning, the exercise that I started internally to start understanding God was because there's a desire and there's a want to understand God. It's the tiny good pleasure in godliness. But we also said there's another thing that's really thousands. What's the Maya? The Maya is the raw intellectual beyond an emotional response. So one would say, but that's separate. That has nothing to do. How could you feed? How could the raw intellect be felt within the intellect that's supposed to create and inspire the emotions and the emotions themselves? So here he said, that's what he says over here, that the kivin should be cast through makabari cloud the kolas spheres. I understand that. And the gamla be also according to what we said yesterday. Shemei hu etzem amoichin. Meya is not just, it's not the encompassing energy, but it's the essence of the intellect. It means an intellectual idea. What Rebbe is trying to say, that's a chiddush over here. That the fact that emotion, that pleasure and want is fed into the process of thinking, like the Shema Yisrael that creates the V'ahavta love, that would make sense. But when you have a raw intellect, means moichin be'etzem, the essence of intellect. The essence of intellect doesn't have to be felt necessarily in the intellect that creates the emotion or the emotion. It's just an idea. So here says no. Even though the essence, in general, the intellect is an internal. An internal doesn't have to be interconnected automatically with all the other internals. Makif makes more sense because it's encompassing. Nevertheless, because at the end of the day, there can't be anything separate, which is really what we're getting to in this mind. There's no separate division within the person. When a person's connected to the essence of what's the purpose of creation, there can't be any separation. That's the idea of achdus. It means at the end of the day, it all comes down to one idea. Achas shalati meis Hashem, right? It's that one focus. So even if you have an essential intellect that could be kind of disconnected from an intellect that's made to create an emotion or the emotions, because it's just an idea raw of having to sort of say, you would think that it has no connection, it doesn't have to be connected to your seichel, to your intellect that's supposed to create an emotional response. So to say, kind of the seichel that you're living in, where the intellect, moichin be'etzem is kind of an idea that just it can be an abstract idea, it has nothing to do with your reality. There's no such thing as an abstract idea that has nothing to do with your reality. So he goes, even though it's etzem moichin, afshe moichin koiches v'nim. Yeshleim she'etzem moichin hu gama klal darg shlamatim. Nevertheless, because you can't separate anything, that's how I understand it at least. So therefore, even abstract intellect has to have a connection with the intellect that's in your practical life and especially in your emotional life. You shouldn't be having, so to say, an abstract intellectual thought that can't be later translated and brought down in an intellect that is meant to feed and create emotion, or then further all the way down into your emotions. Means if you're having an abstract thought it's not alive within you, has no practical purpose to you, why are you thinking it? And even the most abstract level of godliness that you're thinking in your mind about godliness, you have to be able to apply it to yourself. And how do you apply it to yourself? By bringing it into your functional intellect, like the things you're thinking about in your day-to-day life, and then in your emotional, how you feel about things. Asi v'loisa say ach nimshach b'amidis etzem sheva shanim shebehem hi ikra avoided. That it has to come into, so to say, the positive of within your mind and the negative, meaning the things that you should be doing and you shouldn't be doing, which is kind of understanding connected to action, and then all the way down to your emotions, how you feel about things, and all the way how you act in things. Means an abstract, which basically means you shouldn't be involved in anything. And even the most abstract thought, even if it's about godliness, has to be figured out in a way to bring it into your practical life, which is basically what he's going to come to. The idea of Shnei Chayei is that there is no such thing as separation within your life. Because what's this idea of the 100 in general. It's going back to the general idea of the 100. That is connected to the 100 blessings, which is that you have to bring it into your life. Is you've been abiyam and war become a drushim. We'll understand based on what is explained in other various Hasidic discourses. She'inina brachas, what's the general idea of making a blessing? Who klolus avoided. That is the whole purpose of all avoida. If you want to see what is the thing that gives us an understanding, what is avoda? What does it mean to serve God? You can understand avoda from the concept of blessings. What is a blessing? Bracha means to bring something down. And what does it mean when we say a bracha? So the Rebbe explains. You say Baruch Atah Hashem. What does it mean Baruch Atah Hashem? Blesses you Hashem. Means, and if bracha means, the word baruch means to bring down, is lahamshich is to bring down, Shem Havaya Yudke Vavke, which is so to say the source of creation, the Havaya, the creator. Baruch should be brought down, nimshach b'gil lamata, in your reality. When the person says Baruch Atah Hashem, you're saying I'm bringing Hashem Yudke Vavke into my life. They say Dam Shachu, and how do we bring it down? First, we bring it into our own being, our own soul. That's why we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. What does it mean, Elokeinu? Our God. The Yeskili or Insof means to reveal the infinite of God, B'nefesh Kol Yisrael, within the Jew, within the soul of the Jew. Shittis Chazik Emunis B'Hashem. How does that translate? What does that mean to bring godliness down into yourself, that you strengthen your belief in God? Believe within yourself, begili, it should be so revealed. That becomes your reality. You know, Elokeinu is your strength. Elokeinu is our God. That Havaya becomes so much a reality to you that it becomes Elokeinu. So when we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, what we're saying is Baruch Atah, we're bringing down that Hashem should be Elokeinu, our reality. That is our strength and our source of vitality. So then you would say, okay, we're stopping there. I'm bringing Havaya into my being. That's my reality. There it says, no, we continue in the bracha. And after a person brings that Havaya is Elokeinu in ourselves, it's not enough. You have to continue to bring it down. Melech ha'olam, King of the world. The King of the world is not a separate statement from Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, but the Baruch that we're bringing down, that Yudke Vavke becomes Elokeinu, our reality, now has to become Melech HaOlam. That is the King of the world. It's not the King of the world the way we see it as if the godliness is separate from the world, that the reality, that's our reality, becomes the reality of the world. And Rebbe adds, when we could continue, Shaham Shach, Vagili Lamate Mudgoshim, Gam B'toichen Brachas. We can also see this idea, that the idea is to bring Havaya to Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam, King of the world, also in what we're making blessings on. Aside from the fact, the blessings are on worldly things. Meaning, what does that mean? When I make a blessing on a mitzvah, they're made on material things. This is how you do the mitzvah. For instance, if I take tzitzis, it has to be made of tzemer. It's a wool. Wool is a worldly thing, a physical world. If I make a bracha on film is made from parchment and leather, right? And skin. The klaf gashmi has to be made on leather, physical leather. So the bracha itself goes into physical things. So we see clearly how the bracha is malach ha'olam going into the world. Rebbe adds that. But most of the blessings are not just that the mitzvah is performed through something gashmi, something physical, but a lot of the blessings are about worldly things. For instance, when we make brachas in the morning, if you pay attention to the birchas hashachar, it's talking about what happens. The rooster's root. I'm waking up. It's all about the things that are happening in the world. We're blessing God for the happenings in the world. A lot of our tefillos are about the happenings of the world. That the rabbis institute, that the blessings are, I'll say there are things that are happening in the world. And how God runs the world. And what happens? That a person, the creation, taking pleasure. They want to bless Hashem. So every time we wake up in the morning, you say, oh, the rooster is croaking. You say, thank you, God, for having a rooster that croaks. It means you're acknowledging and appreciating God's work within the world, and that's your blessing. You're bringing a blessing into that reality. So too when you're asking God for help, you're asking Baruch Aleinu, Rafa'enu. These are worldly things. I should be healthy. I should have parnasa. Baruch Hashanim. But I want to eat something. Brachas is on foods. That I make a bracha before I eat or drink. Bracha that, like the Rebbe says, when a person makes a blessing, what does that create when you make a blessing on foods? Until that point, you cannot consume the food. The food is something sacred. It's holy. How are you allowed to enjoy the physicality and the joy and the taste of the food? Is only after you make a blessing, like it says, Maamar Rizal. Our rabbis have said, a person who takes pleasure of this world, without first making a blessing, is kilu nanami kache shemayim. You're as if you're eating something sacred from the temple. The world belongs to God. But once you've made the blessing, what happens? The material becomes permissible. Only then it becomes permissible to the person. So here we see again how through the bracha, we're bringing down godliness into the world, means to say we're making the world, that this physical world becomes a place of permissible, that a person could take joy from it, and take pleasure from it. What is the bracha effect? What is the effect of the bracha? It's not that when you make a bracha, it's no longer sacred. That's not the pshat. That what's sacred becomes permissible and becomes yours. When you eat and you drink, it becomes a sacred happening. That's a sacred union between you and the food. Something that was sacred, that until that point, like something hegdish is forbidden to you, you became permissible. Not that the food became choil, the food became mundane. You were elevated to be able to, by the blessing, connect now to the food that's sacred. That's Hashem Artumay, that was godly. It's God's word. Because by making the blessing, you've elevated the physicality. You reveal godliness within all creation, and now there's no more this God's, so to say, handiwork in the food that's not permitted to you. You've become elevated, and now you can consume the food. This is what the Zohar means, that that the level of 100, that completion of elevation of 100 is within the blessings. We make 100 blessings a day. What's the idea of the 100 blessings? That's the whole point of what we're doing in this world, is to bring godliness down to this world. And this is the idea of the 100 years. What does it mean? Not just that it has it in an inclusiveness, but it has within it the inclusiveness of the purpose of creation, which is to bring godliness down to this world. And how do we bring godliness down to this world? By penetrating our intellect, which is the Esrim Shana, the 20 years, and also the Midos, the attributes. In the 7 days of creation, that God created the world with 7 separate Midos. And that's what the main emotion, that's the main avodah today. Like the Rebbe says that the 7 nations, the 10 nations will be when Mashiach comes. Now we're the land of the 7 nations, is to bring godliness into our emotions, into our emotional, into the midos of ourselves, into the midos of the world, that gets penetrated with godliness. To master our intellect, we're not holding there yet, but to master our emotional health, spiritual health, that's where we're holding at this point. I think we're going to stop here, and hopefully we should be able to finish the class, tomorrow. And if we have to go a little longer tomorrow, we'll go tomorrow a little longer. Just don't want to stay too long, so leave it as a short class of 30 minutes max. Thank you for joining, and Be'ezus Hashem, we'll finish tomorrow.